Welcome to your Feel Good Monthly workshop, The Art of the Creative Pivot with Leonardo Ledesma and Zeda. We are going to be talking about living a life as a creative person, living into your creative potential and passion and desire, some of the ups and downs that go with that experience, and exploring some of the different pieces of advice that Leonardo and C have to offer when it comes to stepping into your creative potential. So, if you have been doing the emotional mastery work to feel safe, being present in your body and connected to the things that light you up, and really starting to take aligned action into a life that feels fully self-expressed and potentially into a more creative career or place where you're really starting to prioritize your creative passions, this workshop is for you. And I hope you enjoy our time together. I'm going to read you an introduction to Leonardo and C's work so that you can get acquainted with who we are about to sit down with. And then we'll jump into the discussion-based workshop with them. Leonardo Ledesma, he and I met in Los Angeles when I was an interior designer, and he is working as the founder of Art Scene, which is his Los Angeles-based multidisciplinary fine art advisory established in 1993. He makes some really beautiful curations in some incredible, incredible locations all across the LA area and often around the world. With a background in architecture, having studied at USC School of Architecture, Leonardo began his career in the arts with a strong understanding of spatial design. He has curated over 100 exhibitions and cultivated an international clientele, including collectors, corporations, designers, architects, and developers. Under his leadership, Art Scene has championed the transformative power of art, offering professional art procurement, curatorial services, and career development for emerging and established artists. Leonardo's expertise lies in enhancing spaces and fostering creative connections that inspire and elevate through dynamic integration of fine art. If you're looking to build a beautiful art collection in Los Angeles, or you're looking to connect with a wholehearted, really beautiful person and process when it comes to interacting with fine art, Leonardo is your person. We will also be speaking with Zeda, a Los Angeles-based art advisor at Art Scene. She is a graduate of the Pratt Institute School of Art and Design with a background in textiles and luxury apparel design. Her career spans multiple luxury industries, including interiors, fashion, and fine art, where she drives creative innovation and fosters meaningful connections. In addition to her work at Art Scene, C is a conceptual artist practicing under the moniker Attic Portrait, a collaborative duo with artist Michelle Tift. C believes that great art should evoke a powerful emotional response, be it peace, horror, elation, or anything in between. I have just wrapped up an amazing discussion with Leonardo and C, and even in the editing, I was re-inspired by all of the incredible advice that they were giving and all of these nuggets of wisdom that came through their personal stories as creative artists and inspired people who have really journeyed to get where they're at with their creative practices. So I know that you're going to love this discussion as much as I did. And if you are finally in that place in your life where you're ready to step into your passion and you're ready to try something new because you've done the work to clear the fear and release the overwhelm and really liberate your voice, this workshop is going to light your world up. So without further ado, this is Leonardo and C in The Art of the Creative Pivot. Welcome, you guys, to our creativity workshop and discussion today. As you know, many of the people in the Feel Good membership, as they go into their work clearing fear and self-doubt, and they step into a place where they feel much more masterful with their emotions, much more open in their heart and ready to express themselves fully, they come to this place where they are so excited to discover what brings them joy as far as creation goes. So classically, people are like, I want to write the book. I want to paint the paintings. I had someone last year ditch her guest room. She's like, I only had this guest room out of obligation to my family, but I actually want it to be an art studio. So she sold everything in there and set up an art studio in that space. Some people start taking sewing classes or dance classes or other trainings, but almost across the board, people are ready to express themselves more fully. And they're at the very beginning of exploring what that looks like. Like, how do I take myself seriously as an artist? Is it okay to do that? How do I navigate that world? And you have such an incredible experience, not only working with artists and kind of the art process, but navigating your own creative journey and allowing yourself to really find your own path that makes you feel fully self expressed, that feels really aligned for you. Leonardo, I'd love to hear a little bit about, let's see, how has creativity and art expressed itself through you in the past? Let's do a little like retrospective here. And then see, I'd love you to jump in and tell a little bit about your story too.
Sure, sure. So, in the beginning, back when I was in college, I was studying to be an architect. And so that was what I wanted to do since I was, I think, 8 or 9 years old. I knew that, okay, I want to pursue architecture. I'm going to be an architect. And for me, I saw it as a way to combine my love of art and also having a more practical, what I saw as practical application of my talents in a field that would allow me some marketability.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, I loved designing buildings and I loved designing spaces. And going through school, I learned so much. I learned so much about architecture, of course, about art, about history, engineering. There were so many facets, to my college career that, I really, really enjoyed and learned so much from.
Mm-hmm.
And so my creative journey really in earnest, began there. And had I not pursued architecture, I probably wouldn't be in the field that I'm in right now because it was my studies in architecture that exposed me more to fine art. And I had several friends who were students in the fine arts school right next door to the architecture school. So I was always going over there, wandering over there to see what they were doing that would serve to inspire my design work in architecture. Because sometimes I would just run out of ideas. I just needed inspiration, or I just needed to talk to another creative mind to see where their head was at with their work, and that would give me a different perspective on things. So it was a time of experimentation. It was a time of discovery. And yeah, those university years, I think, were just so formative and they were just so important to my development in this wonderful creative field of art representation and curation that I'd built over the years.
Mm-hmm. Did you ever find any sort of points of friction in people and like the greater community supporting your art? Because everyone comes up in families that some of them are super supportive. They're like, yes, go be an architect, go be an artist, go for it. And it sounds like you found a really supportive peer group during that time that allowed you
Yeah.
to explore and to connect around creating and designing an art and architecture. Did you have a supportive family growing up, or did you ever meet
Uh,
any sort of like pushback in that area?
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, very, very supportive parents. They supported me in all of my endeavors, through school and sports and the dramatic arts, as well. There was a lot of experimentation as I was, growing up, and my family encouraged it. However, once I was in architecture school, I was on that career path. And then when things changed, when I started to move away from architecture, there was, definitely some pushback, some surprise, coming from them that, I had, made this decision. So there
Yeah.
was disappointment, definitely some disappointment with my parents when I made the decision to leave architecture and pursue a career in the arts. Of course, there were so many unknowns at the time, and so with good reason, I would say, my parents had, invested a lot in my education and my sister's education as well, and so to see us move away from, our intended career paths, was a bit of a shocker.
Yeah, I've
Yeah,
experienced similar things with my many career changes over the year. People in
right.
the world are rooting for you, but then they get
Hmm.
comfortable with a particular path, the one that
Hmm.
feels a little more logical or a little more like accepted. And sometimes other people have a harder time with you stepping into the unknown than you personally have. How did you
Yes.
navigate that kind of emotionally and socially at that time, if you don't mind me asking?
Yeah, no, well, it was the biggest risk of my life, really. And so I just thought to myself, well, I'm young enough to give this a really good shot. And if it doesn't work out, I can always go back to architecture. Architecture was, my fallback. And so I felt, okay, I'm going to take this time to really take the risk and do something that I didn't necessarily study for and educate myself about it through experiences working with different artists and different collaborators and learning the landscape, the lay of the land, if you will, here in Los Angeles, in the art
Yeah.
scene. So yeah, it was yeah, a lot of excitement swirling around at that time and dread
Yeah,
at the
sure.
same time.
But it sounds like you kind of anchored into that sort of self contract that you made where you're like, you know what? Now is a great time to explore this. Like, if not now, then when? And
Mhm.
if I need to, I can fall back on architecture. I've got other skill sets that I can utilize, but I want to step into this right now. Like, especially when you're younger, it's lower risk. Though I will say, I'm a big proponent of whenever you want to follow your joy, you should definitely do that. Like, there's no better
Sure.
time than now. But, it does get riskier, obviously, if you have a family or you have children and you're looking at career shifts. When you are able to experiment, it can be so freeing to just allow yourself to navigate that. And did your family eventually sort of like they got easy with it, like settled in, they got used to it?
Yes, yes. It took a number of years.
Yeah, fair.
Right. But once they saw that, I had things up and running and, I was, taking care of, my necessities, and that, I was moving along without too much friction,
Mm-hmm.
then they saw, okay, all right, so he's making, his way in this new career path.
Mm-hmm.
And then they relaxed, but it took a while. It took as long as it took my business to get to a point where it was able to support itself, to support me and other initiatives, that I wanted to put in place.
Mm-hmm. Knowing what you know now
Hmm.
as your present self, what would you tell younger you as far as setting really loving and compassionate boundaries with
Hmm.
friends or family that do feel a little uncertain about your chase into the unknown and developing a brand new business for yourself?
Yeah, I would have said to him, don't worry so much about what people think, and give yourself the space, to really appreciate and enjoy the process and to stress out less. And it's all going to work out in the end. Just, enjoy the ride. That's
Mm-hmm.
what I would do.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
That's beautiful advice. I think we can all take a little dose of that most days. Yeah, because we can take it really seriously when we're
sure.
in the journey, and it can feel stressful when you're trying to get it right, especially when
Hmm.
you're not stepping into an already established, super accessible career with
Hmm.
structure where other people are just like, all right, XYZ, this is how you do it. Like you were really creating personal relationships and learning along the way and figuring it out as you went. And that can feel really stressful. There can be a lot of pressure that we put on ourselves
Sure.
during those times. But I hear you saying almost like, just let it go. Like, enjoy the ride, find your passion, like, just let it be something that you can build really beautiful memories around because you're going to do it anyway at that point, right? We can do it stressed or we
Right.
can do it joyful.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And of course, there's always that element of stress, I would say, concern about what's around the corner. But I think that's also a good thing to hold on to some of that, even as you progress in your business and your career and you achieve some level of stability. I think it's important to keep that in mind. It's a bit of a driver. That unknown, that fear of the unknown, is still there, though it's not as strong as it once was.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right. You have to be present with your business now and
Yes.
still sort of like trying to get one step ahead, thinking about the future, kind of seeing things
Right.
through, planning it.
Yeah.
And that it can be a positive thing, the fear of the
Yeah.
unknown.
Yeah. Just don't let it consume you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It almost sounds like your process is more of like one of really just asking questions and getting curious about what's next.
Hmm.
Hmm.
Right.
What's the biggest question that you have for where you're at now with your creativity and your art and your business development? What's the biggest curiosity or question for what's next?
Hmm. That's a good question. I would say approaching larger scale projects and putting more of an emphasis on public art, large scale installations, finding those kinds of opportunities, for the artists that I represent. That for me is high on the priority list of things that I'm most curious about, and also making some moves in order to be able to access those bigger opportunities.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, we recently got on the list of preferred art advisors for Culver City, which is really good. They have a very robust public art program, so we are on
Cool.
their radar now. Yeah. And there's a project that's in the works right now, which could, take us overseas, and that would be really exciting. Can't talk too much about it right now, but it's a hospitality project that we've been working on. That it's larger scale than what we typically do,
Mm-hmm.
and so that's pretty exciting. So I'm very curious to see how that will play out. So yeah, so just going after the bigger, better, juicier art projects out there. That's what I'm most interested in right now and most curious about.
Mm-hmm. Do you allow yourself the opportunity when it comes to like raising the bar and doing like bigger, more public, kind of more expansive installations? Do you allow yourself the opportunity to take the opportunities or the projects that sort of come your way naturally, or do you tend to like really plan it out and say, okay, I want to like work with this person and this person, this is how it's going to be developed?
Hmm. It's a little bit of both.
Okay.
A little bit of both. Yeah. Yeah. Because, there are opportunities that just come out of nowhere sometimes that are really, really fun and exciting, when these things happen. And then, of course, there's a more direct approach where, oh, I want to work with, this firm on this, type of project. And so, go after that. So yeah, definitely. I think it's a balance of both.
Yeah,
Hmm.
beautiful. Sometimes we just don't know the path until we show up to walk it as
Exactly.
well.
Exactly. I,
Mhm.
I would say in my career path, it's been half planned and half by chance, really. Half of it is just pure luck.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I feel like those are those moments where you maybe you're self-doubting or you're a little constricted, you're a little frustrated, and you're like, forget this. I need to just go out. I need to be myself. I need to go to an event. And then at that event, you meet some random person who's got this
Hmm.
random job and they go, oh, you do art curation? I actually need something like that. And then it just builds into this whole new thing, right? When we finally just allow it to flow.
Yeah,
But then,
yeah.
yeah, having that intentionality around your process and moving in the direction that you want to go is also important. So sounds like you found a good balance between those two things.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And in reference to what you just mentioned about, meeting somebody randomly and, something ends up taking off. So about 10 years ago, I was producing a very special exhibition at the Cannes Film Festival to celebrate the 50th anniversary of The Endless Summer, the famous surf movie with the famous surf poster designed by John Van Hammersveld, an artist I've had the pleasure of working with. I had spent about 6 months already making arrangements, trying to get this show off the ground because putting a show together locally is one thing, but when you're doing something internationally, it's a whole other animal. And there's so many moving parts. It's so complex. And I had gone to visit the festival the year before in 2015. And so, gosh, I can't believe it's 10 years ago. Anyway, so I went there, I just to kind of get a feel for the festival and see what it was like and get the lay of the land. And I met so many people and that I had talked to about my idea and, the project. And they were all very excited. I mean, these were all people from Europe mostly that I had met there at the festival. And so they loved it. They said, "Oh, you got to do this. This is wonderful. Bring the endless summer to the south of France." I mean, they love anything having to do with California, especially Southern California. So so that inspired me. Getting that feedback from people, was so inspiring. So I came back and I continued making plans. I tried to find a space there to do the show, but I made a little bit of progress with that, but wasn't able to solidify it. Anyway, so several months later, things were kind of getting a little, things were slowing down. And I wasn't able to keep the momentum going as I needed to. And then some sponsors that I had in mind that I wanted to collaborate with started to pull the plug, and so I was like, oh my gosh, now I don't have the support, structure that I had at one time. Anyway, so I'm at a party. I went to an artist's gathering at their loft, and there were a lot of people there, and I met this guy who, by chance, I'd never seen him before, never met him before, and I started telling him about my idea for the show. And he says, "Wow, I love that idea. I really dig this idea." He says, "I've actually produced several events in Cannes during the festival, over the past several years." And I was like, "What?" I couldn't believe it. It was
Yeah.
just fell in my lap. This guy just came out of nowhere. And I said, "Oh my gosh, you know what? I've been looking for somebody to partner up with to help make this a reality." And he said, "Yeah, man, I've got a whole network of connections there that could help you pull it together and make it happen." And so
Amazing.
yeah, so there I got reinvigorated. I got the boost that I needed in order to continue because I was at the point where I was just going to throw in the towel. I was like, okay, that's it. I'm going to move on to, some other things. But then, this guy just appeared. And so, yeah, he followed through, and he helped me, get this show made and done and executed there in Cannes. And it was just incredible, incredible.
So serendipitous.
Yeah, yeah.
That's an amazing story. And what I love about that is that you were willing to be seen in what you desired, even though that hadn't come to fruition yet.
Hmm.
Right? So you're willing to talk about it, you're willing to share about it, you're willing to put yourself out there, and you're willing to potentially, quote unquote, fail if it didn't work out, but
Right.
you still showed up for it. And if you had just shut it down or been filled with doubt and been like, oh, the sponsors are pulling out, this is reflecting on my self worth and the project, and I can't do it, and right? We get into those spaces so often. And if you had
Yeah.
done that, you probably wouldn't have mentioned it to that person at the party. And you'd be in a completely different place with that project. But because you're
Hmm.
willing to be seen and showing up and like sharing your joy and your inspiration with people, you found others to support you in creating it.
Yeah.
And that's so powerful. I think that's one of the hardest things for people to do. And of course, you were, a decent amount into your career at that point. So it's probably a muscle that you've worked at this point, but it's a hard
Right.
thing for people to do, especially in the beginnings of their careers, to have that amount of self-belief
Hmm.
and I don't know if the word is confidence, but willingness to just be seen in the process of their creating before it's even happened. I think a lot of new creators want to show up and have it be perfect and have it be successful and be like, look, I'm a big star and I can put these big things together and it's all working. And they want to be seen at that stage and they're not as willing to be seen through the journey. So that's what I really took away from your story is that the value is being willing to be seen in the journey, in what you desire and sharing that with people and letting people support you through it too.
That's right. Yeah.
Hell yeah. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, sure.
Oh, it's so good. So inspiring. Because you just never
Yeah.
know. And the universe, I
You
think,
never
does
know.
support you if we're going to go a little manifestation-y here. It
Yeah.
doesn't.
Oh, for sure. I think once you put the energy out there and you put an idea out there, the intention, I think that the universe kind of recontextualizes itself to help open up that path and open opportunities.
Mhm.
And yeah, you just never know. Something will just come out of nowhere and it helps fuel your endeavor.
Yeah. Yeah. You got to be willing to claim it though first, huh?
Yeah,
Got to show up for it first.
that's right.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
See, I'd love to hear a little bit about your
Mm.
story. How does art and creativity express yourself or express itself through you? How has it in the past?
In the past, I mean, I've
Yeah.
always been a creative person. My dad was a naval commander, so we moved a lot and it was hard to make friends. So creative expressions were ways that I could meet people or cope with, with that kind of childhood. And so I fell in love with drawing and acting and I mean anything where you're making something that brought joy and really helped me process life growing up. And what led me to art school was kind of similar to Leonardo. I loved art, but I didn't understand how I could, make a career out of it. And so I decided to go into school for fashion and apparel and textiles. And I went to Pratt Institute in New York. And so you study art history, you study conceptual and technical things. So I felt like I had that fill of, what I've always loved, but at least I had a career where I could go and make something
Mhm.
tangible and it felt like a little bit more stable. And I'm definitely somebody who has that fear of failure and craves a certain level of stability. But I'm also really creative and they kind of war against each other sometimes. So everything that you guys are saying really resonates with me. So I worked in apparel and textiles in New York and I loved it, but it's a very demanding industry to be in. And I really learned like the art of the pivot and trusting kind of those skill sets. And so I ended up pivoting into like interiors and furniture. And that's how I met Leonardo at an industry event when I was on business from New York to LA. And our stories that we fell in love. So the kind of trusting the creative practice and those things in our lives kind of led us to meet each other as well. Fast forward to now, creativity, I have a creative practice of my own as an artist. It's very conceptual and very different than the work that we do at Art Scene. But I think all of those things have led me to someone who also helps me, who is helping me to learn what he's learned. So I think like trusting the process, I found like a person that I can collaborate with, but also someone who's teaching me. And I've always wanted to work in the arts, and now I found someone who's done it on his own. I always thought art dealers were elusive. I used to have talks with my friends in New York, artist friends, and we're like, "Oh my God, art dealers are so elusive." Or people, galleries, it's so hard to meet them. And then I met one, and now he's kind of teaching me the ropes. Yeah.
Mhm.
Teaching you how to be elusive or teaching you how to be super beautiful community builders.
Yeah, teaching me to trust, that process and
Yeah.
see that you can actually make a career out of the arts, because I never thought that I could. Just like, working in architecture, fashion, I mean, those are all beautiful careers, and if you love it, but sometimes I think art is your passion, but a lot of people, don't feel like they can make a career out of it. And so we choose the thing that feels stable, but it's not actually the thing that we really love. And that's what I'm learning as I'm getting older, and, kind of trusting the process, is that sometimes those things that you actually are meant for, I think, also kind of come back into your life.
Yeah, it's like a battle between the mind and the body sometimes,
Hmm.
right? Especially when we're thinking about what we want to do when we grow up and what's going to make money. And we go into this very like logical mind, structured mind
Hmm.
space where we're trying to fit natural inclinations and creativity into like the school system and the university system and the job
Hmm.
system. And often the way that you really authentically want to do things, it doesn't exist as a job. You have to go create it. And so you can't really be fully in your structured mind. Like you can't make a logical decision about how to even like monetize your art in the world if you're not willing to just make the art first and see how the world's ready to receive it and how it feels really good for you to put it out there, and then bring the logical mind back in and be like, okay, I see what we can do here, or I see what balance looks like in my life when it comes to monetizing art versus just making it and feeling really aligned with your creative process. I love that it brought you guys together though, and that you're able to move into this very fluid relationship of mentorship and mutual inspiration and like co-supporting each other's vision in a way that sounds like allows you both to be really individually supported in your own missions as well as where you overlap. You're kind of weaving together in this really beautiful way. It's inspiring. I want to ask you about how you navigate those moments of pivoting, because isn't that
Mm.
the word of the year? The
It
pivot
is.
is so important. And it is this sort of micro moment in our lives where sometimes people like we freeze because we realize
Mhm.
what we've been holding on to as far as work or money or purpose or identity, that it's not really in alignment for us anymore. And that can feel really scary. Sometimes people I see with my clients, they get a little squirrely and a little uncertain, and they're like, something new is happening and I don't know what it is. And so they go and take like 17 different classes and they're trying to figure it all out as fast as
Mm.
possible. Right. So everyone navigates the pivot in a different way. How did you navigate that? If we were to like break down your mental and emotional process during that time?
And definitely a part of it is I know that the change needs to be made. I was working in luxury apparel, like sometimes sleeping under my desk. This is like very Devil Wears Prada. I'm like, I love the art of fashion, but I just working in this industry is not going to be sustainable. So I knew that there was a problem, but I wasn't sure what to do.
How did you know? Like, what indicated the change was coming?
I think part of it's just like listening to my body, like listening, like I wasn't healthy. I like was having heart palpitations, like just I'm like, I love this, but I know it's not and also looking at the people around me who were my senior and saying, like, is this what I want to be like in 10 years? Do I want to be in this position? I don't think so. As much as I love, the craft and like the technical exploration of working in that industry, it didn't feel like it aligned with what I wanted my life to look like in the future.
Yeah.
So it started
Yeah.
with that, but I think part of the thing that was challenging is it took me like 4 years to really get out of that job and to get into a new career. And so that question started, but then there's part of it of like, I've already invested so much in this. Like a lot of people, I think they have that. I've invested so much in this. I don't want to lose it. And then you end up not leaving and spend your whole
Mhm.
career continuing to invest in something that's not really fulfilling you.
Right. Yeah,
Um,
that sunk cost fallacy.
yes,
Yeah.
that's a good way of putting it. Yes. So that was one of the challenges. But I did find a friend who was a career coach, and she was willing to help sit down with me and look at my resume and look at what, I had abilities in, and compare it to other kind of careers. So that was professionally having someone, doesn't have to be a career coach, but somebody outside of yourself who can look at your life kind of more objectively. think it's really helpful. Like doing this on your own is just not, I don't think it's as doable or as easy. I think having other people
Mhm.
brought into your process is really helpful. Um,
Yeah, absolutely. Because they can literally, they have a different point of view than you have. They can
mhm,
see options that might be available to you that you're not even considering because of
mhm,
unconscious assumptions or expectations or limitations that you put on yourself. They can just be
exactly.
like, well, you love XYZ, so why don't you just go do that? And you're like, I never
Mhm.
considered that. What are you talking about? So yeah, that can be really, really helpful. What did they discover in their career coaching with you? What did they bring up that,
I think a lot of it was just like looking at what I've done and what I want to do in a more like critically looking at it and translating it. Like she was really helping to translate things that I couldn't really express or like yeah, it was more like translating for me. I don't know if that makes
yeah.
sense,
It
but
sounds like
yeah.
identity development, sort of, really allowing you to talk through what's working, what's not working, what you desire, kind of where you want your life to go, what you like, who you want to be, right? You're talking about the people that were more established in the fashion industry and looking at them and being like, these are not the mentors for my life. Like, that is not what I want to look like in 10 years or whatever. And so it sounds like those conversations with this person allowed you to really look at, yeah, who am I? If I set aside all those limitations and all those assumptions, like, who am I really? And what could life look like if I embraced that version of me?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
Oh,
and it was a jumping off point working with
yeah.
her because then I interviewed at a million different places for a million different types of jobs too. And going to those interviews, it's like almost like it's also free coaching in a way because you go to this interview and you talk to somebody in that in a different career field and those interviews also help me figure out what I wanted to do. So sometimes even just going to interviews where you don't even feel like you're the right fit. Sometimes I would just go and I'm like, I feel like they're doing me a favor by interviewing me.
That's such a great action item. I'm going to put that in the workbook. A suggestion for people to just go put themselves out there and see what does fit. Because it is a bit like dating sometimes when you're
Yeah.
making a career pivot and you need to show up and just feel into it and discover it because you don't
Mhm.
know from a job title necessarily if it's going to be a fit for you or not. And I
Mhm.
love that you were willing to just show up and be like, I don't know, you tell me. Let's talk about
Not
this
a good
job.
fit.
Yeah.
Well, I interviewed for like a job doing recruiting for high like technology positions, and I'm like, I could totally do this, but do I want to, and it was really interesting. But I landed at a job with an interview with Dakota Jackson, who's a very well-known furniture designer, and I wasn't really qualified for the position, but I knew that I got along with him and I liked his work, and I talked myself into the position. And I think that I learned so much and I trusted that I really liked this person that I wanted to work with. And it wasn't like the perfect position for me. It wasn't like my dream job, but sometimes you have to just take the next step. It's not going to be and as a perfectionist, it's hard, but it's not going to be perfect. I'm not going to be the creative director of whatever, but really
Yeah.
taking that step opened up a lot of opportunity to see myself in a different light and to try things. A lot of it's about trying different things. Um,
Hmm. How
yeah.
did you navigate failure during that pivot or these like 4 or 5 years as you made your way through this career shift?
And with the new position or just like the interview
With the new
process?
position and also like in the steps that followed.
I think failure in that, I mean, luckily my employer was a really nice person and like was willing to understood that I was doing like a lot of marketing and promotion and PR and like kind of creative for the company. And I had the skill sets, but I didn't have any experience doing that exactly. But I think finding, if not your employer, someone in the company or like someone in the industry to kind of just be present through that. So I mean, it's definitely failing a lot, but there was a lot of forgiveness and also just like teachable moments. And I mean, I was still, in my mid 20s when I started that. So I think it was a little bit easier for people to be forgiving about my mistakes. And it was an adventure. It was definitely an
Mhm.
adventure. So the failure, it didn't feel as much like failure because I was learning and like there was an openness about that. So it depends on your situation, but I felt
Mhm.
like I was supported.
one, I wonder if it really is failure at any point where you're
Mm.
showing up to learn something new. And
Yeah.
if that's like transparently communicated at the beginning of a
Mhm.
work relationship or that sort of collaborative connection, like, is it failure as long as you're willing to show up and learn and grow? Like at any point in time,
Yeah.
you end like people want to see someone motivated to grow, right? Right. They'd
Yeah.
rather have you there learning and fully stepping into the flow of their company or their system than having someone that just shows up and wants to do things their own way because that's where they feel safe, right? Like staying in
Mhm.
this very narrow lane.
Being
How do
malleable.
yeah. Yeah, just being willing to add value and show up and help like expand it as well. I think we forget that sometimes when we're stepping into a new form of self-expression that we feel vulnerable and insecure in it and we worry about letting people down or disappointing or not getting it right. But you're bringing something completely new to that
Mhm.
role and to the relationship and to the company or the industry that doesn't exist in anyone else. And
Mhm.
that in and of itself is valuable. So then the rest is just showing up and learning until
Mhm.
it's all kind of in flow and working. It takes a lot of bravery though to show up and do that and
Yeah.
to be
Yeah.
willing to go through that journey, I think at any age. What's your relationship to, I'd love to ask either of you can jump in, to failure and bravery at this point in your career?
Well, I think failure is an essential part of one's success. I think that we all fear it to some degree. Some of us manage it a little bit better. I think as an entrepreneur, you have to accept the fact that there will be times when you fail, or you fail because of somebody else's actions that caused it. So you have to embrace it. It's just part of the process of being an artist or being somebody in a creative field, being an entrepreneur, and you learn a lot from it. I mean, I've learned a lot more from my failures than from my successes. As sweet as success can be, and it's all the more sweeter because of the failures, of the past as
Yeah.
well.
I
It's
love that contrast. Gotta have the
yeah,
contrast, right?
got to have the
Mhm.
contrast.
Yeah. Art's not good without contrast.
That's right.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
true. That's true.
yeah.
What does embracing failure look like for you?
I think it's accepting that you aren't perfect, accepting that even when you put your best forward, that sometimes things won't work out, the way that you had envisioned them. And as painful as that can be sometimes, you just have to roll with it, and and that is, I think, what separates the successful people from the not so successful is how you handle
Mhm.
failure.
Mm.
Mhm.
Yeah.
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 Yeah, because success can't come without it, right? It's going to be a
Hmm.
given. What do you
Hmm.
tell yourself in those moments where something's gone in a way that you didn't anticipate or didn't desire
Right.
when you're rolling with it in
Hmm.
very like practical terms? What does that look like as far as the thoughts you're having, the actions you're taking, the emotions that you're working with?
Sometimes it takes a lot of energy, out of you, these failure experiences. And I think that processing it and accepting it and taking from it whatever you can to help you with the next thing.
Hmm.
I think that's the really important part. And then also learning to just let it go. You just, at a certain point, you just have to accept it for what it is, and then you have to move on from that, and then move to the next project or the next endeavor, the next work of art
Mhm.
with an open mind.
Right.
Yeah, because the failures of the past certainly inform your future, but it doesn't determine what's going to happen next.
Yeah.
It's yeah, because every new project, every new work of art, is a new opportunity to start again. And
A fresh canvas, as it were.
exactly, exactly. So I go into it with new excitement and a new perspective.
So I hear in there's a part of the process that's acceptance. So just like allowing whatever was to be. We can't
Yeah.
change it. That's what's happened.
Hmm.
And the other piece is really making meaning out of it in a way that moves you forward. So what did I learn from that? Let's take the flower, the bud from this experience and bring that forward with us. So whatever I learned, I can step forward into my next project with that. And then I almost hear this sort of like a cognitive redirection where like, okay, I've learned what I need to learn from this. And now it's time to focus on something else. Like I'm not going to give it airtime. I'm really going to allow myself to move forward, to look at what's next, and
Yeah,
to, yes, allow the past to inform my actions, but not carry it with me.
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
Is that a pretty quick turnaround time for you at this point in your career?
Yeah, yeah. I've become, pretty adept at, accepting, the hiccups, and the mistakes, along the way and adjusting, my direction. So yeah, yeah.
Well
You just, learn to roll with it better.
You do. It takes practice, but then it
Yeah,
becomes another part of the muscle. You don't spend as much time dwelling on it.
exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can't let it get you down because, there's another opportunity just around the corner, so,
There's
you got
another man from Cannes at the party.
there you go. There you go. Yeah.
Absolutely.
And you gotta be ready for it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What would you tell artists from the beginning of their career as far as the ones that are feeling maybe more vulnerable in those
Mhm.
processes of failure, in those moments of failure? What would your one piece of advice be for them?
My one piece of advice would be, and this I is for myself as well, is, be brave. Be brave. You have to approach it, even if you're fearful of the outcome, fearful of the circumstances you might be in. You have to overcome, and you know bravery is such an important element, whether you're creating a work of art, whether you're creating a new business, or you're going after a new job, a new project. Just be resolute.
Yeah, right. And allow yourself to really step into it.
Hmm.
It does take a lot of bravery to try something new for the first time, especially when you have this little like intuitive pull towards it and you're like, I think I want to do this. I think this is going to feel really good, but you're not 100% like anchored in I am an artist. This is what I do. This is my magic, right? It takes a lot of bravery to allow that part of you to step forward and to develop. And it's such a simple word. I think sometimes bravery, be brave. We've heard it so many times, but it really does come down to allowing yourself to believe that even though it's not here yet, that life you want and the creation, it is coming. And you have to
Hmm.
show up for it first and
Yeah.
really invite it in and hold the container for it as it fills into your life and takes up more space. And yeah, it does take a lot of bravery to do that.
Hmm.
A lot of
Yeah.
bravery. What is it? They say your new life will cost you your old one.
Mm.
It's true.
There's a lot of letting go in the process of creating who you want to be in the future and really
Yeah.
inviting that person in. Yeah.
I think fear is what really holds us back from the things that we want, hold us back from beauty in our lives and success, and sometimes those things don't come, even if you do show bravery.
Mhm.
But you just have to be willing to take that risk. It's better
Yeah.
to be brave. Hmm.
It's better to be brave and trust the next step. Like you just
Yeah.
never know. You just never know. And you don't have to figure it out, I don't think, in many ways. You
Mhm.
just have to show up for that next step,
Yeah.
right? And see what happens
Mhm.
and find your stability in doing that each step of the way and really being present with it. Yeah.
Yeah.
See, I want to ask you because we've talked a lot about the independent process that we all go through when we're creating and exploring ourselves as creators and artists and entrepreneurs and human beings in the world. It can feel really lonely. And I think a lot of the times people believe they have to do it all on their own, which
Mhm.
you've talked a little bit about how collaboration can be a really powerful thing. But see, I know you've been stepping into a collaborative relationship with your art and your process. And I'm wondering if you can speak a little bit to just the benefits of collaboration and maybe some of the challenges and points of friction as well, but what your experience has been
Well, in
like.
my artistic practice, I have a collaborator. Her name is Michelle, and we work under the moniker Attic Portrait. It's a literary reference if you're a nerd. And for us, interestingly, like, we were friends before we started collaborating together, and I kept telling Michelle about all these projects that I wanted to make and that I was starting, and I'm really good at starting projects. And so in finding a collaborator, Michelle came to me and she's, I'm really good at finishing projects. So that was kind of how it started. She's like, would you like to be my kind of collaborator in meeting in the middle with this? And like, you'll give me an idea and then I'll help you finish, kind of bring the idea to life. And that's how it started. And in the development of our collaboration, we've been working together since 2021. We've learned a lot about, I don't have siblings. I'm not used to like giving up on my, ideas or like being as flexible. And having a collaborator, I've learned a lot about like being more selfless and being more open-minded about how to approach a creative idea. But when you have two people, you have more solutions, you have more resources, and you also don't feel alone. I mean, I know there are a lot of artists who like to be in a studio by themselves and paint all day. And even those artists still have to have a relationship, because if you're not in relationship with people, you're not being challenged, you don't have as many resources, and also your art is not, going to be seen. I think sometimes art is just for, you can make it for yourself and enjoy it, but if you really want to be in the art world, you have to go to art openings, you have to meet people, you have to. So whether you have a collaborator like me where it's a really symbiotic relationship and it's really fulfilling, even though it's like having a sister, it's like having a family member where you're having to find a solution together. I think it's like more fulfilling, like being in a relationship, even though it's challenging, like family, at the end of the day, you're more fulfilled. And the same thing with, working with Leonardo. Yeah, we fell in love, and then we started, working together. I started helping him with projects, and I'm a very fearful person. Like all of these things we're talking about, I'm like, I'm working on this so hard right now, and having a collaborator to, and a partner or a mentor, or having people in your life who see you and are there for you and work through these things with you, like that's going to help you so much more to face the failure and to be brave. Doing it alone is not, it's just not as easy and it's not as fun. So I
Mhm.
Yeah.
think bravery is one thing, but partnership and collaboration and community are what help you actually fulfill those things too.
Preach. Yes, it expands all possibilities and makes that fear not quite as big because
Mhm.
now you have somebody else's body with their own emotions and their own experiences. And sure, sometimes we can get into relationships where those implode and it's just too much fear all over the place. But
Yeah.
when you do step into a collaboration that's really symbiotic, like the one that you're in, it sounds like the possibilities just grow exponentially. And when you want to make more of a career out of your art and put it out into the public and market it or sell it,
Mhm.
collaboration is necessary. Like you have to be willing to be seen and to share your art and to connect with people and make like build those relationships. Whether you're selling your first book or trying to get a gallery showing or inviting people to your exhibition in your own space, like it always ends up being about community and
Mhm.
relationships. And that that we can do. We can allow that to be a little bit more simple as we step out of the overthinking and just start connecting back from the heart, right? Of what's coming through you and what you want to create in this lifetime when it comes to your art and your legacy. Beautiful. And it sounds like you found a lot of strength together as well in that
Yeah,
way.
yeah. And even, for me at this, stage of my life and career to have found, a wonderful partner and collaborator like C, because, we have this deep appreciation for art and design, and that's the common denominator. And so, we get to work together, in this wonderful setting, with amazing artists that we get to work with, and clients as
Mhm.
well, that invest in those artists. And for the longest time, I was doing this on my own. Of course, collaborating with other companies from time to time, other business people, but it was primarily a soul driven business. And then, when C and I started talking about working together, I started to see the potential. And, she's so hardworking and so bright and coming up with original ideas all the time. And so I thought, okay, this is good. I
Mhm.
think, two heads are better than one in that respect.
Yeah, it takes a lot of the pressure off because suddenly you
It
don't have to
does.
wear all the hats, especially hats that don't come naturally to you. Like
Mhm.
there are other
Right.
people that have that hat on all the time that it takes very little energy for them to offer that gift into the world. Whereas it
Yeah.
might take all the energy to pretend like you can do it, you know? And
Uh-huh.
there's so much power in teaming up with people
Yeah.
and giving yourself a little bit of a break. Like, oh, maybe I
Hmm.
don't have to do it all. Maybe I don't
Hmm.
have to be everything for everyone. Like there's an invitation there to open up so much more space for you to do the work that comes naturally and brings you the most
Mhm.
joy, and then bring
Yeah.
on people
Mhm.
that complement that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's
Yeah.
really what Leonardo does for the artist. All of the business work and brings in the clients and manages the exhibition so the artists can truly, do what they love.
Hmm.
So it's
Hmm.
definitely reciprocal.
Yeah.
Yeah, your whole career is just built on collaboration in
That's
the
right.
most beautiful way. Because if I had somebody to sell my courses for me, I'm like, this is great. You know, that would be
Sure.
amazing. The moment I can delegate those things, I will be delegating them. And I
Yeah.
would only be as lucky, or I'd be very, very lucky if to find someone that's as present and grounded and has as much integrity as you both do in this industry. But yeah, your work is really one of networking and collaborating and building relationships and allowing artists to really be in their zone of genius and have the space they need to create while you get to then bring their art into these incredible buildings as you continue your relationships in architecture and in all of these beautiful business worlds and event centers and stuff like that.
Hmm.
It's really neat to see a system that is so mutually supportive in that way. And I think sometimes it's rare. I think a lot of the times when we look at making money out of art, it feels a little, oh, systematic or transactional, or like someone's always making out with the better deal. But
Hmm.
I don't see that in the way that you've built your business and the way that you prioritize your relationships with some really incredible artists in the Los Angeles area and elsewhere. That's where we connected for the first time because I thought, this guy's got something special going on. Like he's got a big open heart, big smile, a lot of professional integrity. And this is someone that I would really trust to bring into my clients' houses, into really personal spaces, into relationships that mean a lot to me.
Yeah.
And it's inspiring because I know that's something that you've intentionally created to be a part of your business and the way that you work.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah. No, it
Mm.
was such a pleasure to work with you on some interior design projects and with your clients. And, it was a very smooth working relationship that I had with you and your client. And, no, it was great. I mean, if only all of my projects went that smoothly.
Some are easier than others, we'll say,
Hmm.
in the
Yeah.
design world and in the client world. But that was, yeah, anyone looking for some custom art curation in the LA area, Leonardo got that system down. It's a beautiful experience. And now with you two working together, I'm sure it's only gotten richer and fuller. So I definitely recommend it. I definitely recommend it, especially when you're looking at building like a collection of lifetime pieces. You want them to have really positive memories around them. And same thing with interior design. I always thought there's no point in building and designing a home if it's going to be a really drama-filled, argumentative, conflictual experience. Like, you don't want to start a home out that way, right? You
No.
want to do everything you can to protect the sort of sanctity of the space, including the building of it and the whole process. And I think in many ways, what I've taken away from this conversation is, even though it's not easy to protect your own sort of sanctity as you're stepping into these new careers and exploring what brings you joy and leaning deeper into your art, there are usually ways to do that that we just haven't considered yet, be it through collaboration or through taking the job that you're like not sure why you're there, but you know it's the right fit for you, or showing up for things that you've never done before. Like, when things get rigid or tight or feel blocked in those pivots, it's because we just don't see the next step yet. Like, that option is not in our periphery, it's not in our view. And it's an invitation to just go explore, because there are so many different ways to navigate this process in a way that allows it to be harmonious and peaceful and even inspiring and a little bit less scary, though the fear is natural when doing something new. What's one piece of really actionable advice you'd give for everybody, just closing out here, new artists or even artists that are looking at, like, I think I'm kind of done with this season of my career, I'm looking for something else, I'm ready for something new, but I don't know what that is. What's
Mhm.
the first step that you would tell them to take?
Clear your mind of everything that you've been doing up, to that point. And I would say kind of, re-envision what your next manifestation is going to be as an artist, or as the next body of work that you're going to be creating. What does that look like? And maybe you take a break altogether from what you've been doing, and you take some time off to, maybe reset. And then through that process, sometimes you find inspiration, that just comes naturally.
Mhm.
And so I would say, take those signs, that the universe is bringing you, whatever that is, and kind of work off of that, and see where that goes. Yeah.
So permission to take a step back, maybe even take a full-on break, like really
Yeah.
open your mind, let go of everything that's happened before, and just start like dreaming,
Hmm.
start building on what you want to step into and what would bring you joy to create, but then also open up your scope of vision to what's happening around you and start paying attention to those signs and those
Yeah.
little opportunities for connection or exploration, and trust the flow of those things.
Hmm. Yeah.
Beautiful. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm
Or
here
like,
for it.
yeah. In my experience, for example, I've done some, pretty big projects, over the years. And what I always do is, after a big project that has, taken, so much time and energy and focus, I'll just take a break altogether from whatever it is, that I've been doing. And that could be, a week, it could be a month, who knows. And then I gradually, get back into the swing of things. But I think it's in that in between time that it's just so important to kind of gather your thoughts about the experience perhaps that you just had, and refocus, retool, and then you can start fresh again on the next thing.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and to celebrate,
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
Exactly.
because there's, especially if you're a creative person, there's always going to be a next thing and a next thing and a next thing, and
Yes.
it's easy to get in that cycle of never quite getting there when you're
Mm-hmm.
constantly developing, and taking that break, not only to reflect and kind of ground after creating something big is so important, but also taking it to celebrate where you've gotten, even if it
Mm-hmm.
doesn't feel complete yet, but just celebrating the step that you took is so important.
Yeah.
Yeah, beautiful advice. Thank you for sharing that.
Sure.
See, what do you think? What's
I
one
was
actionable step you'd want to share?
I was thinking about play, and really inviting more of a sense of play, especially if you feel stuck or you're looking to do the next thing and you're not sure. I think we're always I'm often very rigid, and I have this New York mentality where everything has to make sense, and I'm a perfectionist. But I've found that play and just really not being, having so much expectation, like creatively, for example, my collaborator, Michelle, and I, sometimes we're putting together a new project and we're not exactly sure what we want to do next. And we'll just start like writing on the whiteboard, like anything that comes into our head, or we'll start folding fabric in really experimental ways, just for fun. And we have there's no purpose, but spending even just a few hours a week just doing things that have no purpose but are, experimenting. Because I find as adults, especially when you come from a certain mentality, play is difficult, but when you invite play, that often really opens up new ideas and inspires and also uplifts you when maybe you're in a pivot or in a place where you're, it can be challenging. So I think play is a really good solution or tool.
Yeah, letting that imagination come through. Because again, if you don't allow yourself to play or imagine something, how are you going to step into something you've never experienced?
Hmm.
Right? You're just going to be repeating the past over and over again if you don't invite that into your process. And I think a lot of people as well, especially if they're looking at a big career shift when it comes to their art, they immediately start tacking on the need to make money with their need to express. And then that
Hmm.
can come from a very constricted place where they're trying to predict what people want, which is a part, right, of making for the market. You want to be able to work with what's sellable and what's engaging publicly. But especially in the beginning of the process, you want to kind of be able to be much more free without using other people's assumptions or other people's desires or opinions to inform your process, right? And play really allows you to explore that. And it's a muscle that a lot of adults have to work. Like you mentioned, it can
Hmm.
feel really uncomfortable to step into a state of play with no purpose, even to just
Hmm.
see what comes through and trust that that is its own version of productivity and self
Hmm.
expression. Yeah. Well, those are two really, really beautiful, actionable steps that you guys can take. To anyone listening, permission to play, permission to lean in, permission to take breaks, and ultimately give yourself so much time to explore the pivot and to see what comes out of it without trying to control the future too much. Just be really, really present with that process. I appreciate you guys being here and sharing your incredible wisdom and experiences and gifts with us in this discussion and this conversation. I know I've learned a lot and I'm feeling inspired. I'm ready to go play as well and to be brave. And yeah, I hope to have you back at some point to have another discussion because I'm sure there's going to be lots of inspirations coming from everyone who's listening to this.
Well, thank you, Alaya. Thank you for allowing us to share our experiences and our knowledge and, our love for the arts.
Yeah, thank you. And also, I'm already feeling like there's some things I can work on.
Uh-huh.
So it's really, yeah, it's been informative as well.
Yeah. This was
Brilliant.
a great exercise for us too.
Yeah.
It's good. It's good. We're working all of the levels here, the emotions, the mental, the artistic, the creative, the physical. And I really appreciate the opportunity to learn with you guys. So thank you again.
Us too.
Thank you for joining us for this workshop. If you're interested in opening up your emotional world so it feels safe to step into the unknown and really allow your creative passion and purpose to blossom, please consider joining us in the Feel Good membership. You can jump in at the $17 tier to really start working on your emotional mastery and your compassionate boundary setting so that you can set up your life to be a container for joy and infinite creation. Or you can jump into the extended membership where we provide bi-weekly coaching, emotional freedom at your fingertips courses, and full self-expression courses, and so, so, so much more to really allow you to go 180 from a life that maybe feels a bit contracted into one that feels fully self-expressed, where you are front and center in your gifts, navigating the creative pivots as they come, like a champion, and we're here to welcome you into it. If you enjoyed this very special access to a feel-good workshop here on YouTube, please like and subscribe for more. You can follow Leonardo and C's work in the links below and discover new inspirations through all that they're creating in the world. If this was useful to you, definitely consider jumping into the Self-Expression Lab podcast, where we have conversations just like this one on all things self-expression and self-liberation. And I hope you have a beautiful day. Thanks for joining us.